Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Brew and Ink podcast. Welcome, faithful listeners. This is going to be an Interbrew episode, and we have myself, SM Freehand, here with you, and we have Britt MB Mooney here with you as well.
What's up, everybody?
And today we're excited. We've been waiting for this part of the Mandalorian series that we've been covering. We get to do the last two episodes of season 2, which are also known as chapter 15 and chapter 16. And these are going to be spoiler filled. I know we say it every time, but we want to make sure we say it at the front end of the episode. Spoilers will be had in this episode.
We will deal them out generously.
Yes. So if you have not seen these episodes, now would be a time to watch them, or you can listen to our Interbrew on it and then go back and see if we hit the mark, or if we were off, or if you agree with us or you don't agree with us. That's the beauty of being a critic and critiquing things. You get to have opinions and share opinions. And
people have opinions on the internet?
Yeah, and they don't always have to match ours. Sometimes people have other opinions. I know.
What? That's a very timely statement. That's a very timely statement with what's happened with the Mandalorian in the last week.
Yeah, so I guess let's go ahead and start off with that topic, and then we'll jump into the episode. So as of now, this is February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, Britt.
Happy Valentine's Day.
And I love being here with you recording this episode, and we love being here with you, faithful listeners. But more importantly, what had happened is about 3 days ago, Disney let go the actress that played Cara Dune. And her name is, I'm having a
Gia something, right?
Gina Carano. And she's the one that plays the ex-stormtrooper. I've got a picture right here.
Ooh, yeah.
Keep it in
Where'd
my
you
back
get
pocket.
that?
These are the Valentine's cards that my son passed out.
No way.
Yes, and they're little holograms. You see that? Oh, you see that?
Yeah.
Boom.
That is amazing. He passed them out at school?
Yes. There's only one other person that had Mandalorian Valentine's cards. His were better because they were holographic, which, by the way, these have 3 images in it. That is updated technology since I was in school and had holographic stuff. There was only 2 images back then.
I know. That's the next level. And and the thing about I was never impressed with the holographic images thing because you could never actually see it.
It full on. Yeah.
Like
it was always like halfway.
It was always like half one, half the other. Like, oh my God, I like the perfect.
I started carrying this right after the news was had that they released her from the Mandalorian series, and by release I mean they fired her.
Technically they fired her.
Technically,
she wasn't like
currently
filming something. So I think they kind of fired her. But they basically
said you won't be working on any future Star Wars projects.
You won't be working for us anymore.
Of posts that she had put on Twitter. And, I've kind of been I've been following her on Twitter since she was kind of getting in trouble earlier in the year. It started when she changed her pronouns to beep, boop, bop, or something like beep, bop, boop.
Yeah.
For the droid language, because everyone else in Disney or whatever was doing it. And she was like, well, okay. Basically, she was going along.
Yeah. She was
being creative.
Just kind of mocking the whole pronoun issue. And
right.
And it basically it came down to she wasn't along the line of.
She wasn't towing the line. Yeah.
Towing the line of some of the political, social beliefs of Disney. Disney is a little more progressive in a lot of what they do. I mean, and we can criticize Disney and for good measure we could. They can say all they want about some issues, but they did film a movie where there was a concentration camp in China about, a mile away that you can actually see in some of the shots. So Disney isn't necessarily above reproach themselves. And I think, I'm not saying I'd agree with everything the actress said or did, but she is an individual, and she was outspoken and just not the kind of outspoken that they wanted her to be, I guess. And so they finally just
She's
said,
a strong female lead. Yeah. I mean, so that first thing kind of put her in the spotlight. Then she had some things to say around the whole presidential, with the runoff, or not the runoff, but with the whole
impeachment
presidential election.
The election.
So that kind of kept her in the spotlight because it was pro-Trump kind of like rhetoric, like, hey, it was stolen, they cheated, sort of stuff. So people were already, they had their pitchforks and their torches like outside of her door.
they had ordered them on Amazon.
Yes. And then when she posted the thing about, which it was a very true statement. I feel like it was very well said and poignant. And if you guys want to go look at it and read it, I'm sure you can find the tweet. But essentially, it's warning people, hey, if you judge people and try to silence people for their political beliefs, it's no different than what the Nazis did by getting their neighbors to hate the Jews. They started with the neighbors. They started with them hating, convincing them to hate their neighbors. And through that's what allowed, the whole tyrannical reign to come in. And she was basically saying, hey, we've got to learn to stop like hating each other and pointing fingers at each other just because we don't agree with each other. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Well,
she had to know she was already in the spotlight.
Ironically enough, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. But ironically enough, it was probably the most true thing she said that was controversial. It was probably the most right thing she actually said. And also ironically saying, hey, we should watch this silencing cancel culture stuff that has a mentality among it with re-education. I mean, there are people who are talking about re-educating Trump voters and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's a popular thing amongst all Democrats or liberals. I'm just saying
it's being talked about.
It is being talked about. And so she called it out for what it is, which is kind of extreme and ridiculous. And so ironically enough to me, they shut her down. She's saying, well, we should probably not shut people down just because they believe something different, and they shut her down.
And they're like, and we're going to shut you down.
So I'm not saying I support the actress, but I definitely feel like it was a pretty heavy-handed move by Disney that was pretty unnecessary. She's great. I mean, come on, she's like an MMA fighter or something. Like she's
ex-MMA fighter.
She's like,
she was built to be good at the part, like she carried the part very well.
I think she did a great job. I actually think she got better as an actress a little bit. She wasn't great as an actress in the beginning, but I think she got better.
So some of her line delivery is not there, or you can tell, she's memorizing a script.
Yeah.
But she was like the right physique, the right build, the right kind of character. All in all, like even when you watch the behind the scenes shows that they do with, they'll have like the whole cast around the table. Like everyone had great things to say about her, and they were all doting on her, and she'd turn right back around and be like, no, it's you guys that make me good in this show. And so there was a lot of love you could tell amongst the cast and amongst the crew. And she seemed very humble to be in the position that she was and working with the people she was.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was cool that they had a female lead who was an action lead that didn't look like a supermodel in the sense of like was 100 pounds and 5'10", like someone who was like, that's some of the most unrealistic stuff I've ever seen on movies. I'm all for strong female leads, but if she's 5'8" and 100 pounds, I'm sorry, she's not knocking somebody out.
She's not flipping people around.
That's not going to happen. And believe me, I mean, we have interviewed Carla Hooch with Fight Right, and she says the same thing. Like, there's no way someone that small could flip people over that were 3 times her size, and it happens all the times in these movies, and it's cool. They're little action scenes, but I just thought it was cool that that here you had this female lead who is attractive. I'm not saying she's not attractive. She's just not really super thin. She's built.
Yeah.
And she's thick, not fat, not at all, but she's thick and she's muscular. Huh?
It's thick with 2 Ks.
So she's someone who actually does kick people's butts. Like, it's not like she's, like just an actress who they put through some choreography. And so anyway, I hope they resolve it where she can come back. I hope they do.
She brings some validity to the role.
Yeah,
is kind of what you're saying. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. But at least we got to see her through these last 2 episodes.
That's right. She was a big part.
Which were stellar action type episodes. We'll start with episode 7 of season 2, which is chapter 15, The Believer.
Yeah.
And essentially, we've got the Mandalorian is coming to Cara Dune to ask her for help to retrieve the child. And he's basically asking her to get Mayfield, the sharpshooter that they had basically helped arrest in season 1, who was played by the comic Bill
Burr.
Burr, yes.
Talk about a controversial dude.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead. Yeah. We won't stay too long on that. But Bill Burr, who did an amazing job. And he did an amazing job last season. And I was so happy they brought him back for this episode. But it starts out with him at the prison.
In the mining camp or
no, it was like
prison,
a trash,
the mining prison. Yeah.
Like a trash dump kind of mining thing. And so he's working there, and Cara Dune shows up because she's a ranger now.
She's a marshal.
Marshal, that's right. She's a marshal.
Dune. Yeah.
And so she's able to, put him
transferred
in her custody for the Mandalorian. And he doesn't really want to go because he's like, I don't want to get mixed up in this. Just take me back. And they end up convincing him. And so
they need him because he used to be Imperial. And so they need to find out where Moff Gideon's ship is. And the only way to do that, to get those coordinates, is to be able to infiltrate an Imperial ship or base or whatever. And so they're like, you still know all of your clearance and codes. And so we need you for he's like, no, I'm not messing with this. He's like, take me back, drop me off. It's going to be safer for me back where I was. But they convince him essentially. And they end up on, I don't remember the planet.
Morak or something.
Morak, that's right. Yeah, he's like, there's a secret base on Morak. And I was like, there's nothing on Morak. He's like, yeah, it's a secret mining base. You don't know about it.
Hence the name Secret.
Yeah. And so they go there. Boba Fett, they're all on Boba Fett's ship, which was funny because he sees Boba Fett come out first. And he's like, oh, for a second there, I thought you were this other guy. And then Mando comes out and he's like, oh, Mando, how you been? You're here to kill me, aren't you? And Mando's like, no, we need you for a job.
Yeah, and just as a quick note, I don't know if you've seen the gallery. They've only done like 1 for this season. They haven't. They did like 8 for the first season. I wanted them to do more, but in the one documentary part that they did for season 2, they talked about how they had to figure out how the inside of the ship would work, because through all the movies, all the Star Wars movies, you've seen the ship from the outside, you've seen the cockpit from the inside, but you haven't seen the whole ship on the inside. And how is that going to work? So I kind of had to figure out a way to make that work. It's pretty cool. And so he's on the ship and they're going, and it's him. And then, and then there's the other mercenary,
the other sniper,
Fennec Sands or something.
Fennec,
something.
Fennec, Shand,
something.
Shand, Shand.
And she's going to be, her character is going to be in
the Book of Boba.
What's the name of the show that's going to
the Book of Boba?
No, but she might be in that too. But she's going to be in the Clone Wars sequel. There's going to be another animated show, and they're going to go over her, like where she started.
Nice. I didn't know about that.
In animation. So she's going to do the voice, and then she's going to be in, obviously, spoiler alert, the little after credit scene, which we'll get to. But no, so it's them and Cara Dune and Boba Fett. And to be honest, I loved these 2 episodes, but I do have a couple gripes.
Qualms.
And one of them is I wanted to see more Boba Fett. Like in the last episode, he came out kicking tail, man.
Yes.
He came out kicking tail, and you're like, thank you. This is awesome. What we've been waiting for. And but they just got him flying a ship around. He's like the taxi all of a sudden. And I'm like, I would have liked to have seen him a little bit more in action. And I guess that they had to have somebody fly the ship.
Yeah, in this episode, he basically had no important parts. You're right. Like, as far as flying. In the next one, they at least show his, like, skills as a pilot. Still, you're very right. Like, he's just in the ship the whole time. He's just a taxi driver.
And I mean, and he does play an important role, but I was just, my other gripe is, so, this is, I love the way they do this. Even though I think it has become a little cliche in the Mandalorian series where, he has like every episode's a side quest, kind of thing. But, but they kind of go through the season, and at the end, he kind of brings that community back together. He kind of brings that community back together that he's been dealing with, whether enemies or friends or whatever he's kind of been dealing with. And it really would have made sense to me to have Ahsoka within that group.
Oh yeah.
Like who else would care, just as much for the child as she would. But I mean, I get it. I think like some of the decisions people make when they're writing stuff is like, can we get the actor or an actress into the episode, and they gotta go, well, we got to figure out a way to not have them or have them. And And so,
because you would think she would, but I guess she was off on her own quest. She got the information she wanted.
Yeah.
So she was going with that. And she probably didn't want to run into whichever Jedi was going to end up showing up that, he was going to try and find.
If you go back into the Clone Wars and even to some degree
Rebels,
but she wasn't really afraid of running into Jedi. I just think I personally think they just couldn't get the actress. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And plus they kind of wanted to give the focus on who they gave it to in the next episode. But anyway, but it's a cool group of people, and they go, and I think the strength of this episode, while there's some great action, I think the strength of this episode are the conversations and the relationship that starts happening between Mayfield. And Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Because he starts asking him questions, like he's giving him a hard time, and he starts pointing out like
inconsistencies.
He's like, you have this like really strict code here, but you're willing to break it. Why?
Yeah, he's like, we all have our lines that we won't cross until we're, stressed out, or until we're, I forget exactly what he says, but until, it gets too hard and then we have to cross these lines. And he's like, for you, so is it you can't take off your helmet and then to be within code, or people can't see your face? Which is it? Because you just took your helmet off to put on a stormtrooper outfit. And what happens is they get to this planet and they see a transport going, and they're like, oh, well, in order to get in, it's got to be just Mayfield, because, they'll recognize everyone else. Everyone else is like, oh yeah, I'm wanted by the international, whatever, ISP. And finally Mando's like, I'll go with you. And he's like, well, I can't bring you in wearing this armor. So they steal a transport and take on the stormtrooper's armor that was driving that transport. And so that's where he's like, so what is it, Mando? You can't take off your helmet? he starts calling him out on kind of like, hey, you're blurring your own lines. Like, what's the difference? He's like, you and I, we're not so different. And Mando's like, let's get one thing straight. You are nothing like me.
Yeah.
I agree. There's some good.
But I think it really highlighted the degree to which Mandalorian really was willing to go to try to save the child, to try to save Baby Yoda. And it's good writing. Like, that's good writing in the sense of keep putting obstacles in the way that force the main character, your hero, to make more and more difficult decisions and have to compromise in order for a greater priority. And that's good writing. And it's kind of like a little wink and a nod. Like, if you're a writer like us, like, it's kind of a wink and a nod to us to show us, like, he's gonna, the Mandalorian has been kind of breaking his own rules. First, it was he always worked alone first, and he starts breaking that rule. And I'm like,
he never worked with droids.
Never worked with droids. like this child, as I talked about in the first episode for this season, first one, that like, the child is bringing out this whole other part of him that's emotional, that cares, that has community, and
pushes him past his comfort zone,
pushes
a little
him
at
past
a time.
His comfort zone. Yeah,
each time.
Like, he never would have hung out with any Mandalorians who took their helmets off. Like, he was like, "You're not a real Mandalorian." Like he never would have done any of that. But they're starting to show him, like, no, you can be a real Mandalorian and take your helmet off. Like,
and I think that's part of how we got to this part, is after he met the Bo-Katan and the Death Squad crew. And they're like, yeah, we're real Mandalorians. We're from Mandalore, but we take our helmets off. We don't follow the sect of your people that actually broke apart from Mandalorian. And I think that started he started to begin to question, what was it that he was following, and is it the way?
Yeah.
And so I think that's how he kind of gets to this point. Like, okay, I'm still sort of holding to, like, I'm not letting people see my face. I'm wearing a different suit of armor, but it used to be, if you took it off, you couldn't put it back on. But now he's taking it on and off and on and off. So we get through. They're on this transport, and the transport's carrying rhydonium, which is, I guess, highly volatile and explosive. And they're like, well, as long as you maintain your speed and you don't get too rough, you shouldn't blow up. You'll be fine. And then, of course, we hear chatter over the comms of the other transports that are en route back to the base. So they're all Imperial, and they're getting attacked by something, and you can see these explosions happening off. And so now we know that they're next in line, just from the way that they're numbering. Oh, transport 2, transport 3, and they're like transport 5. And they're like, transport 5, just keep on target, keep on position. And they're like, oh crap. And they get attacked by these pirates that are coming up and trying to throw thermal detonators into the highly explosive rhydonium. And you get to see Mando having to go out and deal with these pirates that are jumping on their ship and do hand-to-hand combat, but he's not in his normal get-up. He's not in his Beskar armor. And you see, I thought they did a good job in the choreograph of this fight scene to kind of show that, like, when he went to block a punch of someone swinging a spear or a staff, he would block it, and then you would see him kind of react to it, in pain. Like, this armor is not the same, as he's not used to taking those blows and feeling damage, basically, because the Beskar really, shields him from a lot of this. Yeah. So he's able to put himself out there. And so you see him, like, hitting explosions, and he's flying back, and he's getting up, he's panting, he's out of breath, he's winded, reiterating the fact he's not in his armor, and he's a little more vulnerable now. And, they may just blow up any moment now. And they're coming in hot to try and get into this base, but there's even more pirates. Every time he takes out someone, they have to slow down so that the rhydonium doesn't blow up, and another team of pirates show up, and they all have their thermal detonators, and then the TIE fighters come
Yeah.
Blow them all up. And he's like, I never thought I'd be this excited to see stormtroopers. And it was kind of funny how they reversed the role for you. So you're almost like the heroes.
It was a good action scene, and they set it up well in the sense of seeing the different kind of refugee looking people. Like they weren't really refugees because that was their place, that was their planet. But and that was part of what Mayfield was talking about with Mandalorian. Yes. He was like, whether the Empire comes in or the New Republic comes in, this is what happens. You think it matters to them?
Right.
All your philosophical differences, all the stuff, you think it matters to them? They're still poor. They're still, and I just thought that was a very cool kind of thing to point out, and kind of an idea to point out that, because part of what's going on in these two episodes, especially this one, is they're kind of showing how the First Order was able to rise, that there was a weakness in the Republic. There was some level of weakness with them trying to kind of bring some sort of organization and peace back to the galaxy. Mm-hmm. But of course, without the dark side, without Force, without the Empire, like, what could they do? And maybe they didn't have the resources. And so I just thought, so that was part of what was going on. And then, but they just used,
to jump ahead, they do echo kind of the reverse of what Mayfield said with the commander. And he says, people think they want freedom, but it's not freedom they actually want, it's order. And so he's talking about how when they come in and bring, their rules and their tyranny into these places, they're actually bringing order, and so they are making these people's lives better. And that was his argument against it. So we get to see kind of both of those arguments in this episode. But yeah, so they make it into the base without getting blown up, and they're being like cheered in. It was kind of funny because it was just like the scenes that you would see in like the Return of the Jedi when they come back and they're all being cheered on by the rebels. But this time it's all stormtroopers that are cheering on Mando and Mayfield as they get out of their transport, and they're like, wow, you made it. And it comes out that, they were the only transport to make it back safely with their Rhydonium intact. And so now they're like, okay, we got to find the terminal. And Mayfield's like, it's probably in the officers' mess hall, which this is good. They're setting up kind of, okay, that they're in, but the easy part's not done yet. Now they have to get into this officer's place, and Mayfield's like, yeah, I can't go in there. That dude in there, I used to work under him or whatever, and he could recognize me, and I have to show my face at the terminal in order to log in and scan into the system. So I can't do it. We gotta abort. And of course, Mando's like, no, like this is our only chance. This is the one chance I have to get these coordinates to save this child. We're going to do it. So of course he now sets up the next step, or the next part of him crossing the line again, where he goes over to this machine and he has to remove his helmet full on and reveal his face and let it scan his face. So that's, now he's in the system, I guess. I don't really know how their documentation works, but I would assume his face is in the Empire system now. And of course, it also attracts the attention of the officer. Yeah, I guess he's like the highest ranking officer there or whatever. And so he comes over and starts trying to carry on a conversation with him. He's like, what's your what does he call it? Your station or whatever, and he tries kind of bluffing his way out of it. Like, oh, transport crew co-pilot. And he's like, no. What's your TK number? And then that's when Mayfield comes in and saves him. And he's like, oh, this is my commanding officer, TK 359 or whatever he says. And I'm TK 111. And you'll have to speak up to him. He's a little deaf after some explosions. And so they go through this, kind of funny dialogue, but also like, are they caught? What's going to happen? And that's when he's like, you're the only transport to make it back. Let's go have a drink. Let's go celebrate. So now they're like in deep, just the two of them in deep. Both of their faces are exposed, and they're having to sit there with this officer. And Mayfield doesn't like the Empire anymore either. He doesn't like the Imperials, and he's you can tell he's got an itchy trigger finger as he's having to sit there and carry on conversation with this dude. And it was very awkward because Mando really did not do well conversing. Like, he was just kind of mum the whole time. I kept thinking, oh man, they're about to be discovered just because Mando had nothing to say.
Yeah. So a couple things. First of all, it was a little convoluted to get Mando to take his helmet off. I mean, like,
right.
It was like, let's see, how can we get Mando to take his helmet off? I get it. In order to get the information, it has to scan your face.
Right.
And like where does that even come from? Like, where is that anywhere in the world? Like, like that's never happened in Star Wars. But it's got to happen now. Yeah. This is Imperial. It's Imperial procedure. So
yeah, it's the Imperials worked incongruent with iPhone software.
Right. Yeah. So it was a little convoluted, but obviously it just goes to show again just how much Mando cares, because he's willing to do this one thing he hasn't been willing to do the whole time, which is take off his helmet and show his face. And he's willing to do that. And now Mayfield sees his face, and the officer sees his face. And so he's freaking out. And and Mayfield starts kind of going over what happened at, I forget the name of the battle, but there was some battle that happened. And it's actually from Star Wars. I don't know if it's legacy or canon, but it's from the Star Wars comics, where there was a whole battle that happened in one of the comics where that happened, where they killed, they killed off all these Imperials. And,
Operation Cinder. That
Operation was the name of it. Cinder. And so the officer was talking about, he was being all smug, like it was awesome. But of course, for Mayfield, these were his friends. These were his comrades. Yeah. And he's obviously had some level of morality. And that's what I liked about this episode, is that, our first glimpse of Mayfield really didn't have a whole lot of morality that you could see. He did a little bit. But here they're just they're showing a little bit of redemption in his morality of like he became a mercenary, or bounty hunter, or whatever he became. He became that because he had to get away from the Empire. He didn't want to work for people who would do that to their own soldiers. Like, he had to get out. And I also think it's funny, by the way. Yeah. And we might have talked about this in season 1, that here we have this crack shot who was a former Imperial. Like, this guy is a crack shot, where, stormtroopers, the joke about stormtroopers is that they can't hit the side of the barn. But he's the crack shot. But he was never
meant to be. Yeah, he was never meant to be. He just wasn't a material. He wasn't.
Anyway, so that's, the tension keeps building, and it one of my favorite moments in Mandalorian, the whole series, is where he just, Mayfield's just like, I keep wanting to call him Bill Burr, by the way. But Mayfield just he just pulls out his weapon and just shoots the dude in the middle of the mess hall. And like the dead silent, like, what the heck just happened by everyone else in the mess hall was amazing. And of course, then they just take advantage of that hesitation, and they just start blasting their way out. And they start
getting everyone in that same thing. So I'm looking here, and actually Operation Cinder seems to be from Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is a video game that came out in 2017. It was the second Battlefront, which is actually a pretty fun game. And it's a lot like Battlefield, kind of first-person shooter game, but it would be considered canon to some of the, I believe that this game was, because it came out right in between as they were putting out episodes 7 and 8. I think it's in between 7 and 8. So a little tidbit.
Oh, okay,
back
cool.
there. That's where that comes from. So
Yeah.
if you want to know about Operation Cinder, you can go play Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Booyah.
Oh yeah. So yeah, now there's a big shootout and escape. They have to kind of jump out the window essentially over this huge like hydro reactor, long fall. But luckily for them, they've got Cara Dune and Fennec up on the ridge high above in a sniper position. So they see them coming out the windows under fire. And so they start backing them up. And as they're escaping, an important part was before he shot the officer revealed, hey, you're the only transport that brought the Rhydonium back. And now we can use this Rhydonium to make Operation Cinder look like, it was nothing in comparison to what we can do now.
Yeah.
With just this Rhydonium. So
they've got more evil plans.
Yes. And so as they're escaping, it's just classic shootout. Nothing really of importance happens. The Boba Fett flies in and they, run and jump off of the building to get into the ship and all that. But as they're flying away, Mayfield's like, hey, hand me that recycler rifle. And he takes this far off long shot and shoots the exposed Rhydonium in the back of a transport, effectively blowing up all the Rhydonium stores that they had there on that base.
And the whole base, pretty much.
Yeah, and pretty much the whole base, yeah. And so you can see, like, where he still has his convictions, too. And he looks at Mando, he's like, what? He's like, you got to be able to, I got to be able to sleep at night. He's like, whatever helps you sleep at night. And so,
well, because they were the heroes that brought it in. Like they fought off the pirates, they brought it in.
Yeah, he couldn't have that on his conscience.
Now we're responsible for them having the ability to carry out more evil plans. And so, and so then you have this great little scene at the end where they're like, oh, isn't it, like he's ready to go back to prison, and they're like, isn't it great? I mean, isn't it so sad that he had to die, and it's so unfortunate
that he died in the explosion.
And so this is one of my other gripes. I really wanted him to stick with the group.
Right.
I really wanted him. I'm like, why can't he be in the next episode? They got this whole They got this whole like team. They got other mercenaries and criminals on the team. Like, why can't they have him?
And he's just on Morak now, which is supposed to not have any kind of, I guess, like the only way out I could think of is he's got to go with an Imperial transport ship or something.
If there are any left, like he just blew up all the Imperials and there's nothing but refugees and pirates left.
Yeah.
And we'll just leave you here. He's like, oh, thanks. That sounds great.
I'm going to go. Yeah.
I'll just hang out here where there's no way for me to get off this island. Not island, this planet. And so anyway, I was a little, but again, I really think, I could be totally wrong, but I really think when stuff like that happens, I always think they couldn't get the actor back or they didn't want the actor back or whatever. They had a certain idea of what was going to happen in the next episode and you got to kind of write them out. But anyway, I thought it was a great episode. Like I said, I had a couple gripes about the episode, but overall, I just thought it's such a great lesson for us as writers to have a character, but you have to put that character in situations where their strict morality, which makes us like them, right? I mean, like that's part of what draws us to these characters, but then it really draws us in when that morality is challenged by a greater purpose, by a greater, priority or whatever it is, like, and it's just good writing. And it's something we as writers have to kind of remember to do with our characters and to kind of humanize some of the other characters, like they started doing with Fennec and with Boba Fett and with Mayfield, like, and even Cara Dune. I mean, even though she had already been humanized and and really explored in season 1. But they did it in season 1, and that's part of what made season 1 so strong. And even while we were sitting there watching it tonight, my daughter Hosanna, who's 11, she might live with the writer. I don't know. But my daughter, who's 11, goes. She said, "Hey, look, they're showing us that even the Empire has community. They're showing us like when they come back and people are cheering and patting them on the back, like they're people too."
Right.
Which, of course, feeds into how Mayfield gets upset later. Like, they were people, those people died. And he was like, well, those people, they didn't really want to make that sacrifice for the Empire. That wasn't the sacrifice they were really trying to make, Do
you think they're better off now?
Yeah.
That was his line.
Yeah. It's just like I said, I have a couple of gripes, but.
Well, I thought they wrapped up the episode with revealing a little more character development on Mandalorian and kind of humanizing him, where he sends a message to Moff Gideon's ship that says, like, hey, I know you've got the child and you have no idea what you have. And you also, you don't know how important this child to me is to me,
Which he flipped what Moff Gideon said to him. That's what that's kind of something that he said he threatened him with earlier. And so he flipped it on him, which I thought was nice.
It was a little like, hey, we know where you are and we're coming for you. And there's nothing in this world that's more important to me than that kid. And nothing's going to stop me from getting him back. And so it shows again Mando's his allegiance really to this child and the bond that he's made with Grogu, and how it supersedes anything else he's ever had an allegiance to.
Yeah.
Or any other kind of creed that he's been a part of. Like anything that has to do with his child, he's willing, if it means it protects him or keep the child safe. He's got that very kind of parental guidance sort of thing, or parental protective.
Yeah, he's got that role, and just again from a writing standpoint, I'm just thinking about how there are so many little scenes throughout the first 2 seasons.
Yeah,
where the kid annoys him. Or the kid takes something he's not supposed to, and at the time we enjoy them because we think they're cute. But as writers, we have to realize what they're doing.
They're a setup.
They're showing us that there's a relationship developing. Yeah. And now we are emotionally invested, just like the Mandalorian is emotionally invested. Yeah. And so those little moments have to be well done, because you don't want them to be boring, but you want them to be cute or funny, or but as writers, we have to realize, like, those little moments aren't just wasted space. No. Like, they're not just we got to get to the action. Like, if they didn't have those moments, you wouldn't have the emotional weight that happened at the very end of episode 8 or 16 or whatever you want to call it. Like that emotional weight that happens where most of us were like getting teary-eyed, but we're not there yet.
Yes.
Stephen was putting Baby Yoda on his face, touching his face. So then we get into episode 16, and first you kind of see that they're going to, I don't even remember where they are, but they go to this place. And it's not Tatooine again, is it?
No, it starts off with another space chase. It's another space chase.
Oh,
and
yeah, it does.
They get the doctor.
The doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Pershing.
Yeah, Pershing, yeah.
And they didn't ever really explain how they got his location or how they came across him, but
that's true.
We'll story just ignore that. Yeah, story
happened.
And so they get him, and he's sort of rescued. I guess they kind of rescue him from the Empire, but he's also their captive.
Well, they need him because he's going to have some information. But there's a great little moment where there's 2 pilots with the doctor, and one pilot shoots the other one because
the co-pilot's like, and he shoots him in the back.
And he's got the gun to the head of the doctor, and he notices that Cara Dune has a little teardrop on her cheek, which means she's from Alderaan, and he starts doing the dumbest thing you could possibly do, like we're all sitting there even tonight going, why are you pissing this girl off? Like that's the last thing you should do. And so sure enough, he shoots him, and he
says two things that are kind of not important, but they bring us back to the fact that there is community on both sides. And he's like, I was there when Alderaan exploded. I was on the Death Star. And then she shoots back. She goes, which one? And he goes, very funny. There were millions of people that died when those spaces exploded. So he's talking about how he's pissed off because of the loss of millions of people from the Empire, from his side, of people that he knew. And she's pissed off about, Alderaan being, which as a viewer, we've always known that, because we see it from Princess Leia's perspective when it happens. And so we're like, oh my goodness. And then we get, Obi-Wan saying, wow, like he reacts to it. And he's like, I feel like a million voices have just been silenced. But now we kind of get the flip side of that. Like, how many people died when those Death Stars exploded. So I thought that was worth bringing up. And mentioning.
She
shoots him in the face.
So now they have the doctor, and the doctor's giving them information, and then they come up with their little plan. But then, first they have to go get the other two Mandalorians. They got to go get. I forget the
Death Watch.
The Death Watch people. Yeah. What's her name?
Bo-Katan.
Bo-Katan. That's her name.
Kosha Reeves.
Yeah, but one of my gripes about this episode is they don't tell us where the third guy went. There was a third guy with him, and all of a sudden he's just not there.
He's not there.
And they do the whole superhero thing where two superheroes meet and they have to fight for some unknown reason. Like it's like, I'll get you, it was Boba Fett and then the other Death Watch that were kind of going after each other because they were kind of like, hey, not all Mandalorians are bounty hunters because, Mando just comes to like, hey, we need your help. And she's like, well, not all Mandalorians are bounty hunters. And Boba Fett's like, we don't need these guys. And they're like, I would know your voice anywhere. You're a clone. Yeah. You're a disgrace to that suit. Yeah. And he's like, it's my father's suit. And they're like, yeah, whatever, you clone. And so it's Boba Fett and this other chick, Koska Reeves, that go, kind of lose their cool with each other and start trying to kill each other essentially. And then Bo-Katan's just like, stop it. We don't need to be fighting amongst. If we showed that kind of a fight when the Empire was invading Mandalorian, we would have lost our planet. Which is one of those no one would, in the middle of smashing each other into tables, would stop when someone else was like, hey guys, let's not fight. Come on now. Guys, come on.
Let's be friends. Same team.
She was a little more forceful than that, but you're right. That's totally funny. That's really funny. She was like, stop it. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll stop fighting now.
We're okay. We got it out of our system.
And again, Bo-Katan is trying to get the Darksaber. And that's something that she's trying to get. And which they set up a little bit in the series. They set it up enough in the series that in Mandalorian that you get that that's what they need to do, or that's what she's after. But for those of us who have watched the Clone Wars and Rebels, we totally get this is a major thing that he has a Darksaber. This is not just a cool little thing that Moff Gideon has, and they never really get into how he got it. They never went into how he got it, because in Rebels, someone else had it, and I think she gave it to Bo-Katan, didn't she? Micah, did she give it? My son's sitting here. He knows the he knows
The whole
the
backstory to the
Star Wars
Darksaber.
Rebels and the Clone Wars even better than me. But all I have to say is, so he gave it to her. And anyway, so all that to say is, I don't know how he got it. But obviously she's pissed about it. And she's like, look, I got to deal with Moff Gideon. And of course, the implication is because she's got to beat him, because the only way to get the Darksaber and to really have it is to beat the person who has it.
Yeah, but they don't tell you this at this part of the episode. She just says, Moff Gideon is mine. And Cara Dune's like, well, don't kill him because he's got important information. And she's like, all I care is that Moff Gideon surrenders to me. And that's how they set it up.
Yeah.
So all I care is that Moff Gideon surrenders to me.
Yeah.
And so they finally get information on the ship because the doctor, he's telling them, hey, there's
by the way, there's these dark troopers.
Right. Because they're like, oh, there's not a lot of people on there. He's like, oh, you're wrong, actually. The dark troopers are on there. They're not active because they take a lot of power. They're just in stasis, but it takes only a few minutes to get them out of their stasis state. So they come up with a plan as to how to, one team's going to go and deal with the dark troopers, and then the other crew's going to go and storm the bridge.
Well, yeah. So all of them, but Mando, were going to go for the bridge.
Yeah,
and again, there was some fight choreography stuff in there that I was a little like, like these are supposed to be like professionals,
right?
And they're like, shouldn't the ones who have the armor go first? Like, should and then
right,
and then halfway through the battle, Cara Dune suddenly has some huge machine gun, that jams, and then she just there was just some choreography stuff in there that I thought wasn't top notch, but not like it was when Boba Fett showed up. Like that fight choreography was top notch. That was the best. And so
there was one scene where they were on the bridge and they got kind of pinched in between. Like people started attacking. Stormtroopers started attacking from in front of them and then from behind, and the two Death Watch Mandalorians just take off. They like jump off the side of the bridge, and Cara Dune and Fennec are left there kind of shooting the people, and then as they get swarmed from behind, that's when the Death Watch came back from above and took everyone out.
Crossfire.
Which I was like, okay, that was kind of cool.
That was kind of cool. I mean, there were some cool moments, but anyway, so Mandalorian goes off on his own, and of course he has the spear, the Beskar spear.
The Beskar spear.
Which, of course, we all know he's going to have to use at some point, right?
Yeah.
It's the gun in the room. What is it? The gun in the room rule?
Right.
Like, if you show the gun,
you're going to show it,
you have to use it or deal with it somehow. Like, you got to get rid of it. Like, you can't just have the gun. Like, if you're going to show that he has a gun, you're going to have to use the gun, or he's going to have it taken away or stolen. Like, something's going to have to happen with the gun. And so that's what the spear. And luckily for Mandalorian, he's got to sneak past the dark troopers to get to the child. But of course,
no. His mission was to go shut the door and jettison them out. But as he's going to shut the door, they get activated, and one of them gets out. And so the others are trying to break through the door while he's having to do combat with the one. And this robot is just blasting Mando, like takes him up against the wall and starts just pile driving his fist into Mando's helmet, like driving him into the wall. Like he's making an indent into the wall. And so Mando finally like hits him with the flamethrower in the torso area, and the thing just chucks him down the hall and then kicks him down the hall further. And then that's when Mando whips out the Beskar spear and stabs it right in the one weak spot in the throat. And that was like the only way that he could kind of figure out how to deal with this thing. So it's like just one of them was kicking his tail, and he barely, beat them. So now at sets that, okay, now we're here with the expectation of what, how deep they are in the conflict sort of thing. Like, okay.
Yeah. And by the way, using the little data cylinders, that was from Rebels. Like that didn't, like, if you think about it, those weren't in the Star Wars movies. Like, you don't see them anywhere in the movies. Like, that was from like some of these ships that they're bringing in.
They were in their pockets.
In their pockets in Rebels, right?
No, in the original trilogy.
Oh, in the original, Oh, in the original, they had them in their pockets. Okay, but they didn't use them. They only used them.
Dave Filoni just found a way to.
Dave Filoni found a way to use them.
Actually make them into something.
Yeah. And so anyway, so I just thought that was, we were sitting there watching it going, oh, see, because that was like, those are huge story points in the Rebels, like a Rebels episode. You got to get the data thing. You got to, that way you can get in. And so that was cool.
So he used the data. He defeats the one, uses the data sphere to jettison the rest of them out of the airlock. So that you're like, okay, now he's made it. And so now he goes to find the child.
Right.
And this is where you were at. You were talking about he walks in.
Yeah, he walks in. And of course, Moff Gideon is there. And we all knew, right? I mean, like, we know because they're setting up, like, the Mandalorian is going to get the Darksaber, right? Because Bo-Katan, like, they can't just give it to Bo-Katan. Like, that would be too easy. Right. So we all knew that was what was going to happen. And we all knew that when he shows up with the spear and the guy's got the Darksaber, like, these guys are going to have to throw down. And so they end up, fighting. It's kind of an awkward fight. Again, I think some of that's the direction, like the director. Like, I really do think, like, Robert Rodriguez, by the way, did the episode for when Boba Fett shows up, right? Full on. And that dude has, made some amazing action movies. Hellboy and Desperado and El Mariachi. And, like, he's made some amazing action movies.
Oh, right. He did the Mexican trilogy, Once Upon a Time in Mexico,
Mexican trilogy,
and Desperado, and From Dusk Till Dawn.
Dusk Till Dawn. So that action. So I can't remember who did the direction on the final episode.
John. It was John Farver.
Was it? It's just the choreography wasn't as intense and clean,
right?
And you could kind of guess, like, well, Moff Gideon isn't a master swordsman or something, probably, but.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, and there was definitely a part there where he's got the sword up against Mando with the Beskar spear and is, like, going into the wall, and somehow Moff Gideon is pushing and, like, gaining ground. He's, like, pushing Mando backward.
Right.
And I'm, like, sitting here thinking, Mando's totally outweighs this guy just in his armor alone. There's no way. And because I kept expecting them to, like, show, like, oh, Moff Gideon actually has some force powers or something, but they haven't. Like, they haven't shown that at all. He doesn't seem to be any kind of force user. So now I'm like, how is he outmatching Mandalorian in strength?
Right.
Like, pushing him around with his lightsaber against his Beskar spear. Anyways, yeah. So some of that choreography, I was like, I'm not getting this. But it was cool how they showed, like, the Beskar spear getting red hot and as it warmed up from the contact with the Darksaber. But he finally outmatches him, gets him on the ground,
he beats Moff Gideon.
Yeah, and Moff's like, oh, you're sparing my life. This is going to be interesting.
Well, because Cara Dune says earlier in the episode, we forgot to mention that she's like, no, I need him alive. You can have him, but I need him alive because he's got a lot of information. And so he drags Moff Gideon up there, and Bo-Katan's all pissed off because she's like, well, you beat him. That means you have the Darksaber.
What happened? Yeah, and then Moff is the one that explains it. He's like, don't you know? You can't just hand it over. And he's like, whatever, here, take it. It's yours. He's like, no, it has to be won in combat. He's like, I yield.
I surrender. You got me.
There you go. He's like, and she's like, no, how it works.
No, that's not how it works. That is not the way. Anyway, so, and then, because the dark troopers were, expelled out into space.
Yeah.
But now here they come back because they can fly around, right? I mean,
exactly.
And so here they come back and they close the door and they're like, what are we going to do? And bomb, bomb, bomb. And then there's this really little weird part where Moff Gideon somehow lands on top of a gun. Like they throw him down and they don't know where guns are. Like these are highly professional warriors.
Well, that happens after. So that's actually not yet. But yeah, that was weird. But so he says, we all know how this ends. He's like, me and the child are going to be the only one. He's like, you've got an impressive fire team here at your side, but it's no match for. He's like, you had your hands full with one dark trooper. How do you think you're going to handle a whole platoon of them?
Yeah.
And he's like, we know how this ends. And then all of a sudden someone's like, we've got a reading on the monitor. And they're like, oh, maybe someone's coming to rescue us. And it's one X-Wing. And Cardu's like, one X-Wing. Great. That's not going to make a difference. And that's when the dark troopers stop trying to pound in the door, and they all stop and they turn around and face their attention towards the other direction, and everyone's like, what's happening? And even Moff looks worried.
Yeah. So this was a big moment because from the time that Ahsoka says, no, I can't train him, he needs maybe you can find some other Jedi.
Yeah, there's not a lot of them around these days.
And so for those of us who are Star Wars nerds, we're like, well, what other Jedi are there? Well, there's Luke Skywalker.
Like 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah. And there's the dude that goes missing from Rebels. What was his name? What was the main dude from Rebels?
Cody or no?
Yeah.
Although that wasn't his real name.
Well, anyway, so there's only like 2 or 3, and then some people were like spitballing. And it was like, well, maybe it was the guy from one of the video games that they've made canon. So it could have been him. Like who are they going to bring in? And for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks online, there's all this speculation. And the one thing people kept saying was, there's no way it's Luke Skywalker. That's the one thing that people kept saying. They're like, they're not going to actually bring in Luke Skywalker, are they? And so for those of us who've been keeping up with stuff online, we're like, okay, who is it? So then when the X-Wing shows up, we're like, no, they're not really.
Like, what?
No. And then at first the video was black and white, so you don't really see the color of the lightsaber at first,
because you're seeing it through the security cameras.
You see it through the security cameras,
but he fights like Anakin.
And he kind of does fight like Anakin, and so you're like, he's like just kicking butt. Like this Jedi is just kicking butt and
cutting down the dark troopers.
And then they just focus really quickly on the green lightsaber coming into the shot. It's such a great shot. Yeah. That fight scene, however, was well expertly done.
Yes.
For the lack or the awkwardness of the other two, that one it's just perfect. Like that was what we wanted to see from Luke Skywalker. And of course it is Luke Skywalker. When we see the green lightsaber, we know it's Luke. And there's the gloved hand and we know it's Luke. Right. And then, and then he just, dude, when he force crushes that last one,
the last one,
we were like, we were at home freaking out. Like, dude, when we were watching it the first time, we were like, holy crap, dude, what is happening?
Force crushed it. Yeah.
He just force crushed that thing. And then
when
Baby Yoda is touching the screen.
He's like watching to the screen and he's reaching out.
Looking at Mandalorian like it's my friend. Like,
he's like, he knows how to do this stuff. Yeah.
And
so that's when Moff realizes, oh shoot, I better try and make my escape now because my droids just got done with it. Yeah, then grabs a gun because apparently no one's watching him at this point. They're all watching this Jedi trash all the droids through the monitor.
These highly professional
murder bots,
warriors.
Yes.
just don't pay attention to Moff Gideon, or that he happened to have landed on one of the, like, you wouldn't keep track of the weapons in the room. You wouldn't pat the guy down. You wouldn't like, I'm sitting here watching it going, okay, that's a little, and then he shoots the other Death Watch lady.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then she goes down. I'm like, I thought she had Beskar armor.
Right.
Like,
right.
He happens to actually shoot her.
She didn't have a full set.
He actually happens to shoot her in a place where there isn't armor. But of course, when stormtroopers shoot the Mandalorian, they just happen to hit the armor every time. And the dark trooper gets to hit the armor every time. So anyway, all that to say is they knock the dude out. They knock Moff Gideon out. And because they need him alive, and all the Death Troopers are gone, and so Mandalorian's like, you got to let this dude in. Open the doors. They're like, are you crazy? And he's like, you got to let and so there's just a really great scene, and if you've seen it, I mean, like, it was a really amazing scene. If you watch it a second time, the CGI isn't great. I mean, it's great, but like, it's not as organic, and it's pretty.
You can tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they show Luke Skywalker. The big reveal. They show his face. It is Mark Hamill's voice, and he's there, and he's talking with like, don't be afraid. It's okay, little one. And you're going to come with me. And Mando's like, he doesn't want to go with you. And he goes, he's asking for your permission, or he's waiting for your permission, which was great. Cause Grogu, like, after Luke is like, hey, you're going to come with me, Grogu just looks at Mando, and he's like, yeah, he's, he wants your permission, essentially. And this touching moment happens where, like, Mando gets down face to face with Grogu, and Grogu kind of like reaches out and like makes a gesture like, hey, I want to see your face, sort of thing. And Mando just like slowly removes the helmet, and you just see them face to face. And it's so good. There's really no dialogue. It's just, a little bit of music, but the moment is touching. The moment is there, and it's good. They did a great job with it. And then, Grogu just reaches out with his 3 little fingers and grabs his face in the side of the cheek, and a little pinch.
Stephen Folletti is reenacting the moment as we speak with the little toy. And and Pedro does a great job acting that out. And again, you really kind of you don't really think about it much when you're watching the show. I mean, it happens, and so you know it's happening, but you're really paying attention now, and you realize, you know what? He hasn't shown even Baby Yoda his face this whole time. Yeah. Like, he hasn't shown anybody his face. So not even Baby Yoda. And what that shows as a writer, like, it was such a huge thing for him through 2 seasons. But now Mandalorian's journey is complete as well. So now not only is Baby Yoda's journey complete in the sense of he got him to where he needed to be, because at the beginning of season 2, I got to get him to a Jedi. He was given this quest. Mandalorian was given this quest. And so now Baby Yoda's journey is complete. Yeah. And now so now you brought Mandalorian to the end of a journey. Yeah. And now he's ready for a new journey. And it's something that Bo-Katan has been hinting at him and telling him and saying, hey, there's a bigger purpose out here than what you've been after. Right. And Baby Yoda has shown him there's a bigger purpose than what he's been doing. There's something bigger. There's a bigger world out there than he's been operating in alone. Yeah. And it's just, again, Favreau,
and now
Filoni,
he's kind of forced to have to reconcile or deal with the things that are happening on the home planet of Mandalorian, because now he has the Darksaber, and he is the rightful heir to ruling Mandalorian. So like that whole bit's in there too. Like Bo-Katan keeps asking him, "Hey, you should come with us and help us with what's going on with Mandalorian."
Yeah, she tried to recruit him a few episodes ago, like when they first met him. And so I like where that is going. By the way, we didn't mention the other great little moment was when R2D2
shows up, and he's like, he's like, beep, 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 beep. He's doing his thing, and I'm just thinking to myself, he's saying, "What the heck? It's a freaking Baby Yoda."
But so it just kind of ends there with Luke taking Baby Yoda and Mandalorian, has
the elevator shuts on them, boom, and it cuts to black.
Oh, by the way, some of the scenes with Luke were very reminiscent of Darth Vader and Anakin, like not just his fighting style, but some of the way he was walking, kind of showing up through the mist, and some of that was very reminiscent, like so well done by those guys. Like it was a great payoff moment.
Yeah, it's a scene worth watching and rewatching.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And so they just kind of end there. And so then there's the
credits,
and then there's an after credit scene, which is where what we were talking about earlier, where Fennec comes in and shoots the second in command dude. So so
the guy that had been working at Jabba's palace,
but who's now
the Jedi
in charge,
of and big and fat, just like Jabba,
and big and fat, and. And I was reading online somewhere where there's, and I haven't kept up as much in the last 10 years with the comics, Star Wars comics. Like I was into some of them for a while, but comics just got too expensive for me to, me personally, for me to kind of keep going.
They branch off in so many different veins too. Yeah. You can never tell which one to.
And so
I followed up on some of the Darth Maul comics that came out a couple years ago. But there's so many different ways you could.
There's so much different stuff, and it gets to a point where you keep having kids, and pretty soon you're like, I don't have money. I don't have money to keep buying comics like this. Yeah, and so it was unfortunate. I mean, I really did like.
They need a Netflix for comics where you just pay a certain amount of thing per month, and you just.
Well, I know Marvel and DC has it where you can buy it, but I've never been able to get into reading comics online. For some reason, I've just never been. I mean, you got to have like a big iPad or something. Like I don't know, there's something about it.
Really all that to say
is, in the comics, supposedly that dude, I forget his name, but the dude with the big snake on his head, he. There is a comic about him taking over and coming to power after Jabba.
Fortuna.
Yeah, Bib Fortuna.
Bib Fortuna.
And how he takes over after Jabba dies. And so what you see is Fennec coming down that I mean, it was like right out of Return of the Jedi. Like they like bit for bit. Just like when Mandalorian goes into the bar, and it looks just like it did in Tatooine. I mean, they did such a great job making it look just like it did in Return of the Jedi. And goes in there and shoots him, and then Boba Fett sits down, and now he's
on the throne.
And they have what is it? Yeah. It's called the Book of
Boba. Yep.
Book of Boba. Is that what it's called?
As his side.
As his kind of sidekick, a second in command. Which they hadn't even teased that, which is so funny. Like 2 weeks before the last episode, they had like a big Marvel Disney something, a big Disney conference or something.
Yeah, to show the things that they were putting out.
And they're like, coming up in the next year, we've got
none of that.
I mean, they had like 4 or 5 Star Wars shows that they talked about, and they didn't even mention this one. And it was like a total shock, like a total like, oh my God, everybody was freaking out. So anyway, so that was it. And I think season 2, I'm not going to say it was better than season 1, but it definitely had a lot of really strong moments. I think the side, some of the things they were doing story wise were getting a little cliche and repetitive, in the sense of every time Mandalorian shows up, someone goes, "Oh, I'll only do this if you go on the side quest with me."
Right.
Like, I mean, that only happened like every episode.
Right. It's either that or I'll do this thing for you if you give me your armor. Or, so it's either they're after the armor or they're after him going somewhere else.
So again, it wasn't a perfect season. I really do think
there were a few good payoffs. Boba Fett was a good payoff.
Great payoff.
Luke showing up was a great payoff. And then the touching moment between Mando and Grogu was a great payoff.
Oh, I think Ahsoka was a great payoff.
Well, and Ahsoka was a great payoff.
I think the Dark Troopers was a great payoff for me, especially those of us who grew up playing the game. And there were some great payoff moments. And again, they do a great job of balancing that, keeping the nostalgic old geeks like me happy. Yeah. And also bringing in new audience, people like Katie, who wasn't able to be here tonight.
Speaking of Katie,
she doesn't even like Star Wars, but she loves The Mandalorian, and so they do a good job bringing in modern type storytelling that brings in everybody, even people who may not be Star Wars fans. And it was just they do a really good job, and it wasn't perfect. But
I feel like Katie has a great point, and I hope they do it. But she was saying she wished they would have kept Mayfield around, and that they had put him in the teaser with the Book of Boba, because she feels like he would be a great foil to the other two as kind of.
Oh yeah.
Between the three characters, they would have really good chemistry, or conflict as well, just between the different types of characters they are. So I do hope that they can get Bill Burr back into one of these.
Me too.
Whether it's the Book of Boba or Mandalorian again,
and hopefully they don't fire him after he says something too controversial. In a couple episodes.
Yeah, he is a comedian, and that would be his MO.
Well, that's kind of his shtick, right? I mean, it's kind of his shtick as a
saying
comedian
controversial things
is to be like, I don't care what people think about me, and here's what I think of the world. And he's kind of like a modern day George Carlin. I mean, he's kind of that sort of like, but maybe because he kind of gives everybody crap, it works, and he doesn't get it in as much trouble. He's not as focused on who he gives crap to, but anyway, I hope they bring him back, and I hope Cara Dune comes back. She did a great job. And I really like her character, and they really made her a great part of the story. And I really do hope they bring her back. But I'm excited about just to see what they're going to do, because they're going to have to take Mandalorian in a whole new direction. Yeah,
I'm interested to see where they take season 3. Hopefully, it's different enough too, that we don't feel like, oh, okay, he's on side quests again, and yada yada yada.
Yeah, I agree.
But I'm like, what are they going to do with Luke? Like, is he going to become a major part?
I don't think so. Story? But I was wrong before. Grogu? I didn't think they'd bring him in at all. So who knows what they're going to do?
That's kind of what I feel like they've written themselves into a corner if they're not going to be using Luke as a character, because I'm expecting to see training with Grogu now. Like the reverse of Dagobah. Like now, instead of Yoda on Luke's back going around, it'll be Luke on Grogu's back as he trains.
No, I really do think. I mean, I'm not saying they won't bring Luke back at all, or Grogu,
but they probably won't show much.
I don't think they'll show much. I think they're really going to take. I think they're going to. I could be totally wrong, but I think they're going to take Mando on a different path. They're going to start taking him on a different path, because he's learned, his character has gotten to this point, and his sensitivities have gotten to this point. His community, he's got a community of people around him, and but now he's being thrown into political and much bigger issues that he's going to have to, that I think is going to make him uncomfortable again. See, the Baby Yoda made him uncomfortable. Like it put him in, it kept putting him in situations where he was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And he won that. So now they're going to have to put him in some other sort of situation, which I think will be political intrigue. I think it will be like
Mandalorian political intrigue. Yeah.
What's going to happen with the Darksaber? What's going to happen with Mandalore? What's going to happen with the Empire and the New Republic?
What's going to happen with Bo-Katan?
What's going to happen
with
Bo-Katan?
They've established it. She really wants that sword, and the only way she can get it back is to fight him for it. So at some point, I'm expecting in season 3, they're going to set something up, whether he agrees to it or if she blindsides him. One way or the other, there's going to be a duel between the two of them.
Yeah.
And
Disney, by the way, has already said that they're coming out with all these different shows that they're going to bring it all together. Like they have a plan to bring in whatever. There's an X-Wing show. There's although that might be older, that might be like
Wedge Antilles type.
Yeah, like Wedge Antilles. But they're the Rangers are going to bring in. I think Ahsoka's going to have her own show, but I think they're going to build to. They're going to have 2 or 3 different shows that are going to build to a bigger climax. So we're going to bring everything together. They said that's their plan. That cool. After Mandalorian 3 and some of these other shows, they're going to do and they'll probably do it right. They're going to do kind of what Marvel tried to do on Netflix with Daredevil and Iron Fist and Luke Cage
and Jessica Jones,
Punisher and Jessica Jones,
the Defenders.
Like they tried to bring the Defenders together, but the Defenders wasn't that great. And what made it not great was that you didn't really. Jessica Jones was good and Daredevil was good, but Iron Fist was really bad. I mean, I'm sorry, Iron Fist was bad, and
he was always a cheesy character to begin with. But I thought they did a really good Iron Fist in one of the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoons.
Yeah.
So I had seen one that I liked, but it wasn't the same.
It wasn't good. He was just whiny. It was a bad character, and the woman that they ended up giving the Iron Fist too, like she was a great character.
I forgot about that.
And they kind of fixed it by giving it to her. But Luke Cage, who I love, Luke Cage is literally one of my favorite Marvel characters. Yeah. And but they just didn't do him justice in that kind of that one. Was it one season? I know he was in Jessica
They had 2
Jones.
seasons. I really liked season 1 of Luke Cage, and season 2 wasn't as good.
It just wasn't as good. And so them trying to bring in do the Defenders was a great idea, but I think that's what they're going to try to do with
Star Wars.
With Star Wars is you've got this universe. They don't have to build it out. You know what I mean? Like it's there. And they just have to use Mandalorian as an example of how to kind of create these cool stories.
They'll do a couple different characters, and then they'll bring them all back together to coalesce in a different storyline. That'll be cool.
Which is what has happened in the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian, where he interacts with these different characters, and for some reason, whatever, they bring them all back together. And I think that's what's going to end up happening is you'll have Mandalorian and the Rangers, whoever the Rangers are going to be, and Ahsoka and what's his name? Thrawn is going to be at the core of it somehow. Yeah. So I think they have a bigger plan now because as we've already talked about, I don't think they realized just how huge Mandalorian was going to be. I think they were wondering, is this even going to work? Like this is the first live action Star Wars show ever. And it not only did it work, it became like amazing,
like the reason to have Disney Plus.
Right. And so anyway, I think it's going to be cool, but we'll see.
So let's talk about our plans for the future. Our next Interbrew is going to be finishing up the Avatar.
That's right.
Reviews that we did. So we'll get into season 3 of Avatar, and then that'll probably be closely followed up with WandaVision Interbrews.
Yeah, we'll have to do at least a couple WandaVision because we are really enjoying that show.
It's been really, I love those moments when it just goes from you watching like an old 60s TV show to like all of a sudden tripping you out and like becoming like almost like a mind kind of crazy, like make you feel crazy almost. I love how they've been
it's
doing
very
that.
unique, and so we'll have to do that. And we might need to pick one interbrew at some point of a movie or a show that we think stinks. Like,
okay,
we keep doing the movies and shows we really like.
Yes, it's true.
Maybe we need to do one like Wonder Woman 84 or something where we're like,
we may need to do Wonder Woman 84. That one, we should talk about that one. Another one we could talk about, and this may be worth talking about because it could elicit different opinions from people, but Pixar. I feel like we were just talking about this with my sister-in-law and my wife. Like, it's been weird with Pixar recently. All their movies have been about dealing with death and loss and like a loss of a parent and all that. So like Onward had a lot of that in there. It's really kind of these depressing type undercurrents to the story. And then Soul dealt with it too.
I really like both of those.
You can like them, but then at the same time, you can go, are these kid movies anymore?
Oh, yeah.
Like, is some of these emotions are not emotions that you want your kids really thinking about depression and death, but there are kids that are in those situations as well. And so they'd be probably very healthy.
Yeah, but that's,
for those kids
that's
to be able to process.
That's a big part of a lot of the hero journey. There are a lot of
it's dealing with loss.
A lot of the Disney movies, that dealt with dead parents or they were orphans or what Cinderella and Snow White. You had a lot of these stories where somebody died and there was tragedy that happened in the beginning.
Yeah.
Bambi, it happens, at the end or whatever. Come on, Finding Nemo to me is pretty traumatic. Within the first 5 minutes, you're like, dude, his mom just died. Like, it wasn't even like it happened in the past.
Right. Like it just happened right then. Yeah.
And him trying to find his kid and his kid is lost. And like, there's that whole storyline. Like, it's pretty, there's a lot of anxiety with these stories, So
I think it'd be a great little debate topic.
So besides some interbrews, one of the reasons why we're doing some interbrews for a while, guys, is we are brainstorming on the next season. We just finished up, not Singularity. Singularity. We just finished up Hero is a 4-letter word, which I think was excellent. And on the one hand, I'm going to be putting together that as an ebook to start giving it away and getting some email addresses. And then we will also, we're also going to, on the other hand, we're going to be brainstorming on what the next season is. And I think where we're going with it so far, everybody, is that you guys will help us decide what the next season is going to be. So we're going to have, we're working on a couple different options and we're going to write some samples. And I think you guys, the audience, are going to help us decide what we're going to write next.
And we will probably announce that on the next Interbrew, but definitely on our social media. So check out the Facebook page. That's where the polls will be put up for your opportunity to vote on what to happen next, and Instagram as well. So be looking for that within the next couple weeks.
Yep.
But until then, remember to raise that glass to inspiration.
On Zoom.
I've been drinking a homemade chocolate stout that I made, which was very good. Everyone liked it last time we had it. We didn't really talk about it.
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
And there's a vanilla porter as what I'm on now. So I've had a chocolate and a vanilla. But
And I've got again Still Fire, which if you listen to the podcast much, you know, I get some stuff from my home brewery here, and it's actually in a still fire glass, although it's empty now. It was a Scottish ale.
Yeah.
And it was nice. It's probably my favorite that Still Fire makes. The Scottish ale is, it's my favorite. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was a good night, man.
Raise that glass to inspiration.
That's right.
And stay inspired, guys. Good night.